Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all: family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives. Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today we have a very special guest and her name is Amy Singleton. And I can't wait for you guys to get to know her and hear about her inspiring story and all the change she's currently making in other entrepreneurs' lives. Amy, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you are all about.
All right. Well, like she said, I am Amy Singleton. I am a 42-year-old woman living in Oklahoma City, where I've lived my entire life. And I'm a former nurse turned digital marketing agency owner, which is a totally different job description in my former life. And I am a person who has learned to love herself. That's really my entire mission, is to help people learn to love themselves, because I spent way too long not loving this person right here.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I feel like the first step into doing anything for us to be happy or successful is first fully accepting and loving who we are. So that's amazing that you're trying to spread that mission for other people. Now, tell us a little bit more. How did you get into the nursing field? How did that transition into digital marketing? Because it is two whole different worlds.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I got into nursing because of fear. I was letting fear hold me back, because what I really wanted to be was a doctor. And I let fear hold me back from that career. And I settled on being a nurse. And I was an operating room nurse for over a decade, did open heart surgeries, really intense nursing career. And then I started to feel bad. I got a divorce. Lots and lots of stuff happened. But ultimately, I had gastric bypass surgery. I was almost 300 pounds at one time. And I had lost a lot of weight, had gotten divorced from my husband, who came out as gay after being 20 years together. And then I broke my back on a four-wheeler machine with a new boyfriend. And all kinds of health problems started coming my way. No one could figure out what was going on with me. It took a couple of years for doctors to determine that I had actually had lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and all kinds of autoimmune disorders that had put me in a wheelchair. In fact, I had moved back in with my parents after that happened, broke up with a boyfriend, had a miscarriage, got cancer, all this crazy stuff happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's an hour-long story to tell all that happened. But yeah, I was in a really, really dark place, emotionally, physically. Like I said, I was in a wheelchair at one time. I could barely walk. And I got super depressed. And it wasn't until some other people saw things in me that helped me start taking tiny steps forward, one tiny step at a time. And then I met my husband. We've been together now 7 years, and he was an entrepreneur, had owned many businesses over the years. I'd been retired from nursing for several years, but slowly, through personal development, therapy, all kinds of different ways, I started to better myself. And we started looking for a problem to solve in our community, because he had owned several home service businesses. And at the time when I met him, he was working out in the oil field, really far away from where we were physically, from our home. So we were living that life, like on Facebook Messenger, just, video calling all the time. And we were trying to bring him home from that. And he said, you know who I've spent a lot of money with? People like lead services, marketers that promised me the world and gave me nothing for my businesses. He's like, and I thought, we can do that. We can do better with that. And so we started paying experts to teach us digital marketing, building websites, SEO,
Wow.
ads. We started paying experts to teach us. And so our business has been reiterated a few times over the years. And now we are partnered with Height Digital, which is the world's first agency model, franchise agency model. So we're a part of
Oh, wow.
yeah, 20 other agencies from coast to coast that all have a centralized fulfillment team. So we're able to train and develop our own people without having to white label services, which most people know what that is. If you're in this kind of digital space, you know what white labeling
Well,
is.
tell us
We keep
more,
everything in
actually.
house.
Well, tell us more, actually. I think our listeners would benefit from that because right now, digital marketing is huge for a business. And I know for myself, for my business, it's been such a struggle for me to find people that I trust, mainly because sometimes we
Yes.
just don't know too much about the Google Analytics, the SEO stuff. We just don't, as average people, even as entrepreneurs, you don't know too much
Right.
about that world of it unless you spend time to
Yes.
learn it or work with it. So tell us a little bit more about the white glove. Oh, that's what you called it, right? I'm like, I don't even
White
know what that is.
labeling.
White
Yeah.
labeling.
So white labeling is where, our industry, digital marketing is a completely saturated industry and there's really zero regulation in our industry. So we're telling people all the time that you're making an investment in your business, but who's the regulatory agency watching out for the consumer? There's not one, right? Like there are all kinds of regulatory agencies watching out for your financial advisor when they say you're making an investment with me and here's going to be your ROI. They can't determine your ROI any more than a digital marketer can determine what your ROI will be on SEO or ads. So there's just very little regulation in our industry. Anybody with a pulse can raise their hand and say, I'll build you a website. Well, you don't know where that website's being built. Many times, so many of the clients we serve come to me saying, I didn't even know I didn't own my website. I didn't know that I didn't have control of it. When I canceled, it went down, or my marketer went out of business because they were a solopreneur and they were just doing everything on their own. What most agency models look like today is one or two talking heads, maybe a really small team locally. And what they do is they white label services. So they sell you SEO and then they have a white label fulfillment partner, many times in India or the Philippines. Nothing wrong with those places, but it's a different team fulfilling that work. And then they take the work that that team fulfills and then they take it and they wrap it up pretty and then they send a report to you. But they don't have any control over what's actually happening with that work, with the research, with the training of the team that's doing it, with the QA process. So they're just kind of selling you a thing and then they go take this other thing and then they pass it to you that they buy from someone else for a much lower price.
So there's like
Height
a missing link.
There's a missing link, yeah, and because the people that are writing the content for your website are not from where you're from. They don't know the people in your area. They don't really know your industry. And so Height Digital has really broken the mold as it relates to that by having a centralized fulfillment team that all of our franchise owners share. And so we train that team, we develop that team, we promote internally that team, we QA that team. And then we also have all of our small local teams in our areas that I know Oklahoma City well, I know the state well, I know the industries in the state well. So we're able to direct that content with our team that has data from our 700 nationwide clients, not only the data we share amongst each other, but the data that's just available to anyone. And we can really consolidate those efforts to make a lasting impact for our clients. And we are our clients' partners. We have meetings with them monthly so that they know what's going on with their marketing. We're not a set it and forget it agency. That's really
Wow.
our goal is to be an agency and a marketer that a customer can trust, that they can pick up the phone and call, that they can email me and they know within 24 hours that thing on their website is going to be changed. They're not constantly chasing a marketer that's chasing a white label fulfillment partner to make those changes and then pass it back up the chain. So we're able to really offer a much more boutique experience, but we have the experience of 200 people on our team behind us directing that ship all the time.
Wow, I love that. That's an amazing marketing business model, honestly, for a digital marketing company. Because, like I said, I've worked with a lot of different ones, and I know what you mean by missing the links and feeling like some of them don't even fool like the people that are working on your stuff as a business. They don't fully understand your business. So I could really
Yes.
see how that could set you guys apart. Well, congratulations on finding your
Well, thank
your
you.
place,
Yeah.
and you can do
Yeah,
it
it's been great.
with your loved one and grow together. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Now,
it's been
for
great.
anybody that wants to know, what's something that most people don't know about you personally? Let's get to know Amy a little bit.
Oh gosh, I think I already spilled some of the beans. I used to be almost 300 pounds at one time. I was a registered nurse that had open heart surgeries for a long time. I married my high school sweetheart that I met when I was 12, had two kids with him, and almost 20 years later, he came out as gay. That was a really hard thing to learn. Most people don't know that about me unless they dig a little deeper.
Honestly, from everything you said really quickly, I could tell that you've moved past all the things that challenged you in life, and now you're in such a good place to move forward and focus on the things that are going well. And I love that. I don't like to dwell on the past, but big congratulations to you for going through so much. But I know, I deeply believe everything we go through is for a reason, and it makes us stronger and it makes us who we are. And I do want to,
Absolutely.
point out all those things that you went through, and what a beautiful place you're in now for some of our listeners who are going through hard times, because we all go through hard times.
Absolutely. I'd also just like to say that I've been sober nearly 6 years as well, which has been a huge triumph for me and overcome a lot of near suicidal episodes. I was extremely depressed at one time, and I just heard of a networking contact that I knew, not a close friend, but an acquaintance that took her own life this past couple of weeks, and she seemed like a very, very happy person with a business that had it all together. And so, just a gentle reminder to everybody out there that we're all going through some stuff, and you just never really know where someone is despite that smile. So check on your friends, check on your happy friends, check on your successful friends, because we're all going through something, and nobody knows those secrets that we keep that we feel so ashamed of sometimes. So I feel a really great responsibility to stand up and say, I'm what addiction looks like. I'm what overcoming looks like. I'm what this thing that
Mm-hmm.
you're going through looks like, that you can successfully navigate going through anything that life throws at you. You're not alone, because I felt so alone during those
Mm-hmm.
times that I was struggling.
So, what advice would you give somebody who's going through a hard time as far as to seek help? I know there are a lot of resources for a lot of different things, but sometimes, it's hard to get to that point where we seek help. What advice would you give based on your experience?
Um, Two things: keep moving and keep connecting. Those are the two things that I stopped doing that led me down that deep, deep depression hole. I separated myself from everybody, locked myself in my house. I wasn't working because I was disabled, but I separated myself from my family, all those that cared about me, and I really quit talking to people, and I quit moving. I mean, physically would not leave my home, would not even hardly move around my own house. And I know that's probably way further down the line, but it happens very insidiously when we start to stop talking to certain people or certain friends or certain family members. And then it's very, very easy to isolate yourself. So keep moving and keep connecting with people. Um, and obviously, like you said, reach out. There are so many nonprofits, organizations, 988 numbers, help numbers, suicide hotlines, tons and tons and tons of local resources. Wherever you are, there's a resource that can help you, and typically on a very low cost sliding scale or for free, to just talk to another human being. It doesn't even have to be a professional, just connecting with somebody that can hear you out and help you navigate what you're going through. It takes other people.
Yeah, it really does. And I think for the rest of us, that when we are in a good place, for us to be more compassionate, like you said, we don't know what other people are going through. We need to just be
Yeah,
more open and compassionate and kind of like aware, because it's really
yeah,
hard for us to also be aware of other people. Like we get stuck in our day to day. Everybody's busy. We all have
yeah,
problems. Some are bigger than others, but I think we all need a reminder to like check on a friend who you haven't spoke to like 6 months or a few months even, or even few weeks that you haven't heard from. Check on them, see maybe they're going through something and they just need like a familiar voice to be like, hey, I care about you, like where have you been?
Yeah,
So I think that's a really good
absolutely.
reminder for all of us, like even for myself. Like sometimes I find myself so busy and consumed in my life because I do want to do a lot, and if somebody has kind of like not disappeared, but I haven't heard from someone in a long time, I don't think about it twice, but I think
Yeah,
that's part of being like a good human. We can
a
take like
hundred
a few seconds
percent.
and like, I haven't heard from this person. Let me just send them a quick text and see if I
That's
could do
right.
anything to make their day better.
Absolutely. And two, on that note, I mean, I love that you said to have compassion because and that compassion has to extend to ourselves as well. I think we don't give ourselves enough grace and enough compassion. Um, I tell myself all the time if I'm in traffic, I am traffic because, I hate traffic. No, you don't. You don't hate people. The guy that just cut you off might have just got a cancer diagnosis. He might be rushing to pick up his kid from school that's sick. He might be on his way to or from a funeral. We just don't know. And having that loving kindness and compassion for other people, it's really difficult to do that when we can't have compassion and kindness to ourselves first.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one like attitude or mentality change that I had to develop a long time ago in order to just be at more happy state all the time or
Yeah.
most of the time. Just, instead of saying, like you said, oh, that asshole that just cut me off, we say, oh, maybe he's really like having a rough day or he's like rushing to the hospital because something happened to a loved one. But
Yeah.
anyways, let's move on to my one of my favorite questions I like to ask my guests to get to know them. If you can change one thing in the world with a magic wand, what would it be? And don't overthink it. We all want world peace, obviously, but the first thing that comes to your mind.
Um, Addiction. Yeah, I would eradicate addiction with a magic wand if I could. It robs people, it robs families, it robs communities of beautiful, vibrant people that are suffering. So that would be it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as far as your work and your career, you've had a lot of challenges that you overcame, and I'm sure everything is always a constant, work. We're always working on ourselves. But is there let's talk about business, since this is also an entrepreneurship podcast. What was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome with your current business?
Um, you know, Systems and processes. That's really it. Whenever you're first starting out in business, um, you do a thing, but you may not do it frequently enough and back to back enough to know what happens next in my business. Like I make that sale. Oh crap, then what? Then what happens? What do we do? And it early on in business, it was kind of like always trying to figure that thing out. But truly sitting down, and even if it's just on a notepad or on a Google Doc, typing out what happens next in my business and what system am I using that to automate that thing, especially if there are things you can do to make it easier. I would absolutely say that's one of the hardest things for all business owners is really figuring out what happens next? What are those repeatable steps? And that's the way that you scale. Scaling a business is really boring. It's not fun. Like it's easy to make a prototype or make one thing happen one time. But I just heard Elon Musk say on a podcast the other day, he's like, a prototype is easy to make, but the manufacturing is the hard. He's like, I cannot stress enough how difficult it is to manufacture. And to me, I can relate that back to manufacturing your process of what happens next every single time in your business. That part is hard, and it seems like it should be really simple, but it's not. It's very, very hard.
Now you said Height is part of a franchise that you can own it and make your own as well. Now, does that make it a little bit easier with the process? Do they give you more guidance
Oh,
when you're
yes,
purchasing
absolutely.
the franchise? How was your
Oh,
experience with
yeah.
that? Because as entrepreneurs too, or as eager individuals who want to start a business or buy a business, a lot of times people are thinking they need to start from scratch. They need to build a business. They need to have everything figured out on their own just so they can make and keep all the money. But in reality, sometimes that's not the best option for every single entrepreneur. Buying a franchise or partnering or just buying a ready business, and taking over learning might be a better option. What is your experience with owning a franchise and going through that process? What were the fears? And, because sometimes, in my opinion, I've
Yeah.
never owned a franchise. So sometimes like I'm scared to pay my money and, because I still, the franchise still has somewhat control, and it's hard as humans to depend on somebody else for that control. So can you tell me your thoughts on
Definitely.
that?
Yeah, when we were first starting out and they approached us to partner with them, I was really scared. I was a little skeptical because it's a very, like I said, there's not another concept like it out there. But I dug in. My advice to anyone buying a franchise would be to consume every bit of content that you possibly can that franchise has ever put out, especially if they're a newer model. Find out how much support you will have from the franchisor and the team. We are a very, very close team at Height. We meet daily on daily Zoom calls. We're constantly in Nicaragua, where our corporate offices are housed, where our people are. We talk to all of the other franchise owners. So really find out what level of support you're going to have from the franchisor, and check out their processes and systems. For us, we were in the process of building those out, like I said, but we were fast forwarded. I would credit probably at least 2 to 3 years in our business processes and systems by partnering with Height and what they already had available. I would caution that there is some level of business acumen, required to purchase a franchise and run an agency. It's definitely not a set it and forget it. Like, I don't just sell the thing and they do all the work. It's a partnership with them, and I wanted to make sure that partnership. I mean, it's like a marriage. Having a business partnership is definitely like having a marriage, and you want to make sure it's with the right people. And really, as long as your values are very well aligned, you can work through almost any other problem that you have, or challenge or struggle or improvement that needs to be made. But if you're not doing it with the right people, then it will never work. So JC and Karen Height are great people, and that's what really drew us to the model.
So, for somebody who's looking into a partnership or a franchise, make sure you fully checked out the business, that you fully understand what they're doing and how much support you're going to get. And second is make sure that you have the same values or the vision with the people you're marrying, basically, to make
That's
sure that
it. Yeah.
it could go as smooth as possible. All right. Well, I love that advice. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So going back to, again, another one of my favorite questions to get to know my interviewees. It's a deep question, but you don't have to overthink it. Okay. What does a happy and fulfilled life look for you right now?
Choices. My life looks is happy and free when I have the choices that I can choose. Not being under control of an employer, not being under the control of really anybody. Choices and freedom in my life are more important than ever. My time is more important than ever. My children are getting much older. 19 and 15 are my kids, and my husband's daughters are all 3 grown and moved out now. And so, a happy and fulfilled life is having the freedom to choose where and how I spend my time, and I have that, and so it's a beautiful thing.
I love that. Okay, and as far as time, we spoke about managing the business, having the family life and all of and being working on yourself. If someone was to follow you around for one whole day, or as entrepreneurs, no, not every day is ever similar, but how do you manage your time, or how do you structure your week as a business owner to stay on top of things? Because part of having choices or having the freedom sometimes is not for everyone, and it's sometimes challenging because no one's there to tell you what to do. No one's going to pull you out of bed and be like, hey, clock in and get to work.
That's
What
right.
what have you found helpful to really try to be a successful entrepreneur in your business?
Boy, that is definitely a loaded and deep question for sure. My days do look different a lot of times, but at first, when you're first starting out in business, like you kind of do anything, anytime that you need to do. But as the years have progressed, I've definitely segmented my calendar. So I host a podcast as well. I only record those on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I very rarely take in-person meetings on Mondays because that's my kind of get shit done day, and I'm at my desk most of the day Monday. Thursdays and Fridays typically I reserve for in-person meetings, networking, coffees with friends, and lunches with partners and clients, things like that. But I'm going to go back to a concept that I use in my podcast. It's called the Queen's Lead podcast. And I have this little crown that I put on when people say something very leaderly and queenly. But people ask me all the time, what about work-life balance? What about work-life balance? I'm wearing all these hats, the mom hat and the business owner hat and the PTA mom hat and all these different hats. And my challenge to people is you don't have a lot of hats. You just have one crown. And every crown, every jewel in this crown
it.
is a different facet of your life. And so, I may be putting together a proposal for a client at 8 p.m. so that at 8:20 a.m. I can take my son to school that's 15 and is going to be driving soon and won't need that from me. And so being able to really do what needs to be done when it, not necessarily in a 9 to 5 situation, but I just have one whole life, and blocking out time on my calendar to get certain things done, just holding that space has been really instrumental in me figuring out how to not take on and off all these different hats and just wear the crown of my life.
I love that. And I found that very helpful for myself too, just to dedicate days or half days to certain tasks when I have to wear so many hats. And then it just feels organized. Like today, I don't have to worry about anything besides like my podcast, my interviews, right? I don't have to worry about like anything else until I'm off of this focus, and it really helps me a lot to do that. And
Yeah.
I think for me too, just like you said, on Mondays are kind of like your days to not have anything super scheduled, so you can do all your office and catch up. And I do something similar too, and I think it's very helpful just to have a moment to kind of think and catch up on all the little tasks. And a personal day. Do you do any personal days where it's like, don't bother me, this is my me day, I'm gonna get my nails done, or I'm gonna take some time to just watch a movie? Do you do any of that, or there's
Definitely.
no time? Okay, okay, good.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely.
Awesome. All right. So we did kind of touch base on you being overweight or having health problems, and you had to really figure that out to be at a better mental state in order to get your life together and all of that. Can we go dive a little like deeper into that? Because sometimes people are unaware, or we get stuck into this unhealthy lifestyle. Even for you, like having your education and background in nursing, you got kind of stuck in that phase for a little bit. Can we dive a little deeper and talk about it and give our listeners a little bit of a guidance of where they can start?
Yeah. So for me, growing up, health consciousness we were not health conscious. We were more health concerned. Like it was always something that we were reacting to. Like we need to go on a diet because we're overweight. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So like we just didn't have the education and access to fitness and healthcare the way we do now. I grew up in Oklahoma, which just happens to be, I recently learned this year, Oklahoma City specifically is a testing ground for new fast food restaurants and new fast food products because our
Oh,
people are so
wow.
obsessed with it. Like they know that
Wow.
Oklahomans will rush to the drive-through. And so, I don't discount my parents or my family because they just weren't equipped to know what was right for us. So when I was still in nursing, I mean, it became really evident to me that I was becoming more and more unhealthy. I was on the verge of diabetes. I had high blood pressure. I was working in nursing and doing open heart surgery on people having heart attacks. And here I am, way overweight, not taking care of myself, but it wasn't a value that was instilled in me from a young age. And working those kind of values of eating right, moving your body, are so hard to do as an adult when you haven't grown up that way. So I used gastric bypass to catapult my journey. I had gastric bypass in 2012.
But
No, 2010.
what led you to that point where you were like, okay, I gotta do something about it, you know? Because
Yeah,
that's kind of
a doctor's appointment. A doctor's appointment where all my lab work came back, and the doctor was like, "Look, you're on the verge of diabetes. You're 20." I mean, I was like 20 something at the time, a young mom, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm scared." My maternal grandmother, when she died, um, we had to buy an oversized casket because she was probably 600 to 800 pounds. I don't know what she weighed, but she was so severely depressed and so severely overweight. And knowing her as a child and how vibrant and happy she was, I watched her depression and weight just put her in the grave, quite literally. So it was a combination of looking at my family history, knowing lots of people had died of heart attacks, lots of people were very unhealthy, and knowing that I wanted to live longer. I wanted to make a different decision. So yeah, I had gastric bypass, and then, it wasn't until just this last year or so, honestly, I had the bypass over a decade ago, but it wasn't until this past year or so that I really started leaning more into movement, my health, exercise, diet changes, and I feel so much better. I hate that it took me till my 40s to learn this, but something happens when you reach 40 that you're like, I'm no longer working out to look good. Like, I know I'm not going to have a Kardashian ass, and that's okay, but I want to live longer. I want to sleep better. I want to go to the bathroom. I want to do the things that humans need to do to live and be effective. And so that was really my motivation the last couple of years to start exercising and eating right, just to live longer and to have a healthier, happier life. And when you
Yeah, but
start to make those little choices, you feel better. And so then you do more of that. And it's a very interesting dynamic when you actually do something for a consistent enough time that you start to feel and see the change. You're like, there's something to that. I think I'll keep doing it.
yeah, it's just getting started. It's even like getting to the gym. Like once you get there, that's the hardest part. Then you end up working out anyways because you're there. But
Yeah.
I one book I like to mention is the book of Tiny Habits. I think that's the full name. It's Tiny Habits. And I think that's literally how it works. Like, for us to make any major change in our life, it's so hard. Like, you can't go from being overweight to never working out in your life to like just being like a gym, who goes to the gym every day
Right.
or who eats right all of a sudden. So it's like the tiny
100%.
steps. And what you said, it's beautiful. You just do something tiny and then you see, oh, this feels good. And that good feeling is what's going to push you to keep going or make bigger changes. And for our
That's
listeners
right.
who's having a really hard time with bad habits, any bad habit, that book was really helpful for me because I had some habits that I just kind of became part of me. And I was like, oh, why can't I get rid of it? I'm such a strong person overall. But as humans, sometimes we just need those incremental things to be able to
Yeah.
make a lasting change. And that book helped me. So if for other
Hmm.
people out there who are having a hard time, I think that you guys can pick up some good tips and tricks from that book.
I don't think I've seen Tiny Habits. I did read Atomic Habits, which probably has some similar concepts, but when I first started working out, we walked around the block. I just was started walking around the block and a couple of years ago. And then that wasn't enough, and so then we started riding bikes. And then we started doing, and so like you said, you can't try and stop drinking and start exercising and eating right and doing, I mean, it's really hard to change 10 things at once. One tiny change. And then once that thing sticks, you can add to that.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so let's go back to your podcast. I do want to talk about it. I do love what it's all about. But can you share with our listeners what inspired you to start the podcast and what's the movement you're trying to create with it?
Yeah, I was inspired to give women a platform to share their stories. I just think we finally have a seat at the table, and I want to move our seat up to the head of the table in leadership and
I'm
development.
right there
I
with
want,
you.
right? I want to stand on the table. I want other women to stand on the table. In every organization I've ever been involved in, when there's a woman involved in the leadership in some way, shape, or form, it's always just better. And it's not because women are better, it's just because we bring a different perspective. And we are able to collaborate with men and women together to really bring something to a better place. So I was just inspired to give women a voice and a platform, not only those that are already on their entrepreneurial journey, but women who are thinking about exiting the 9 to 5. I think that COVID opened up a beautiful door to let people know there's other options out there. And that we can make our own way, and that we can do that right from inside of our homes and home offices with nothing more than a laptop and a mic. We have a place, and I want to inspire women who want to do more, be more, to share their stories and inspire one another to do more and be leaders of our families, of our businesses, of our communities. It's time for us to lead like queens, and in a humble leadership. To me, queen leadership is not a tyrant. Queens, in my intro, I said I'd love to say queens rule, but they don't. Queens lead, and there's a difference between being a ruler and being a leader.
I love that. All right. Is there any guest on your show that was that had a huge impact on your life or on your show? Is there something that stood out to you, if you can share?
Oh man, I've had so many great guests. But recently, this episode hasn't even aired yet. But I got to interview Diane Gilman, who is she's known as the Queen of Jeans. She's, I believe, 77 years old. And she made a fortune when she was very young. She moved out of her home as a teenager in California because she wanted to be a designer. And she was born the day after World War II ended. And so way back then, I mean, her only job in her family was to make babies and get married. And she was not having that life. She knew she wanted to do something in fashion. And so she really made her own way. She started off by making bedazzled jeans for people like Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin and all these celebrities out in California. And then she moved to New York, got her jeans into, as a middle-aged woman, she found that jeans weren't fitting her right anymore. So in her 40s, she started a new jean company, got it on QVC, got it on HSN,
Wow.
sold millions and millions and millions and millions of pairs of jeans. And now in her 70s, she's hosting a podcast called Too Young to Be Old. And she recently went through yeah. Oh, and let me tell you, so on our interview, she's sitting in her Manhattan high-rise apartment. You can see Broadway Boulevard right outside her window. It's incredible. She's just this incredible force to be reckoned with. And
when I grow up.
I know, right? She's just a force. And truly, she told a story about how she was just recently undergoing cancer treatment. And she just had a really humbling experience by being in this cancer ward next to a homeless woman and a news anchor and all of these really high, just people of all backgrounds. And she said it really humbled her because she's made her fortune and made her way and done so many successful things over the years. But it took cancer to really put her in her place, as so to speak, to realize that cancer doesn't give a damn if you are a millionaire or if you are homeless. It doesn't choose. And so that story was really inspiring and really helped me to know what's possible and to keep myself humble and know that things can happen and that we have to be prepared for those things.
Wow, that's great. I can't wait to listen to that episode on your podcast. So for our listeners out there, make sure to check out her podcast. It is called, again, Queen's Lead Podcast, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and the first episode of season 2, I was actually interviewed by a professional voiceover artist, by a male, the only male that's ever been on the podcast, and he lives here in Oklahoma, but is the voice of the Harry Potter trailers. He is the voice of Disney. He's the voice of Visa, Audi, tons and tons and tons of huge national, international clients, especially Disney. He was a child actor on Sesame Street. So we turned the tables and he interviewed me on my own podcast, which was really humbling, really weird. And he pulled a lot of stuff out of me. So that episode is already out and it was a really incredible experience. So he does the voice of Elroy Jetson because he did that when they revamped the Jetsons. And so that was a really fun interview because his voice is like butter.
That's really cool. Now speaking about that, so in business too, and you spoke about like these great guests that were on your podcast, networking is also huge, right? To be able to work with people, collaborate. Now, how much of your time and effort, or what are some things you're doing in order to network with great people that you can have on your show?
Yeah, I do a lot of in-person networking just in my town. My community is really important to me. So we're a part of most of the chambers of commerce in our area. I'm a part of a local networking group. I ran a local networking group myself just for other people that are new in business that need to learn how to get out there and say that elevator pitch of what it is that they do. But I also, and those are the places that where I really am able to serve. But the places where I am served are in rooms like my mastermind group. I collaborate with other advertisers in our local ad club and the American Advertising Federation, our local chapter here, among Entrepreneurs Organization, our local chapter here in Oklahoma. Those are the more collaborative business support group, so to speak. Like when you're at
Yeah,
a certain
I
level
love
in
that.
business, it's really hard to relate to your family. It's really hard to call up your family if they're not business owners or your best friend if she's not a business owner and say, hey, man, I just landed this $1 million deal. They're like, okay, bitch, you snob. Like, it's really hard to share your wins, like that top 5% and that bottom 5% of your life and your
Yes.
business. It's really hard to share with other people. So I found a lot of solace and help in mastermind groups that meet. My mastermind group meets in Dallas quarterly, and then we go to Costa Rica and Nicaragua once a year as well. But local and online mastermind groups, industry specific groups. So working with other advertisers, other marketers. A lot of people are like, they want to hold their thing really close to their chest and not share. But I have found that one, there's enough success available for all of us. There's enough room and there's enough clients. We could never do business with everybody in the world. So there's no competition among that. And you can really learn so much from other people that are doing more than you. And seek out rooms where you're really stupid too. I love to be the dumbest person in the room because I learn so
Same.
much from people who are willing to share. I mean, right now our mastermind group is being personally mentored by John Maxwell, John C. Maxwell. I sat in a Zoom meeting with him
Wow.
yesterday, and it's incredible to learn from a 70-year veteran of business and leadership. And I just get to soak it all up. So finding rooms where you can serve and be helpful, but also finding rooms where you're learning and developing as well has been very important to me. And I get lots and lots of referrals of great guests for the podcast and clients and stuff like that naturally by being in those rooms and serving where I can and knowing that I have something to offer others as well.
Wow, I love that so much. Honestly, a lot of people don't even know that's an option. They don't know that they can seek and be part of like different communities that they can serve and be served at. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Now we are getting tight on time, so I'm gonna ask you one last question, although I have so many more for you. But I do want to close this because your podcast is also so much dedicated to women and women trying to, lead and be queens and in charge of their lives. Um, in your past, you have been told that you've been too much, and that's hard to manage. It's hard not to react to that and be in a bad space. What advice would you give other women who are almost like being shut down? Because that's how I look at it. Anytime we try to almost like glow, it's like somebody's dimming your light or you're being shut down. So how did you maneuver through that? I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I was at I was at my mastermind group. This has been a couple of years ago. I would love to say that I've always been this way and like I don't really care what other people think and all of that, but we do. We all care. But um, I was fangirling over one of our speakers, and I ran up to her because I have been told, shh, be quiet, you're so much, your voice carries, calm down, all my whole life. And I ran up to her and I said, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see you. Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm so excited to see you. And I know I'm a lot, but I'm just really excited to meet you. And hi, and this tiny little woman, I mean, like 5 foot nothing, it grabbed me by my shoulders and she looked me dead in my face. And I'd heard this before, but for some reason that day it just clicked. She said, I know that you've been told you're too much your whole life, and that's okay, but you're not. Those people are
Wow.
not enough for you. Those people are not your people. And there are 8 billion people on this planet. You could never be friends with or do business with them all. So seek out the people that are your people and leave the rest of those people behind. And for some
Wow,
reason
that
that day,
literally
it
gave
just
me
clicked.
goosebumps.
Yeah, it just clicked. I'm a recovering people pleaser, which I think a lot of us that are too much are people
Mm-hmm.
pleasers because we just want everybody to like us and we want to share our story and be shared with, but not everybody's for us. So really recognizing, going even back to what I said about partnerships and business and in your life, the values of the people that you're surrounded by can absolutely make or break your life. Like 100%. You have to be, if you get clients that are not aligned with you or that are offended by a lot of tattoos, which I have, or offended by me cussing or something like that, like, well, then they're just not going to work out. They're going to cancel. They're going to churn out. They're not going to be a good client long term. So really recognizing that not everybody's for you and it's okay. There are people that will love you and it's a very tiny percentage of the population and that's okay.
I love that. Honestly, that also helps us close the podcast as well. I was going to ask you your last words of encouragement, but that kind of did it.
That's
But
it.
before we do close, can you please tell everybody where's the best place they can connect with you, where they can find you? And also, again, if you have any other last words of encouragement for our listeners.
Absolutely. You can find me. My social handle is at the real Amy Singleton on all the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then amysingleton.net is where you can find links to my podcast, to my business website, and to everything else that I do. amysingleton.net.
Yes, and we'll link all of that below. Well,
Last
thank
words
you
of
again.
wisdom. Love yourself. Talk out loud to that inner voice and name her. I name my Shannon. So when she starts talking to me, that inner critic, that imposter syndrome screaming voice, I really tell her to shut up out loud, and I speak out loud words of affirmation to myself. I have to do that. So love yourself. Love yourself first and shut up that inner voice, that inner critic, because you can. You can do the thing. You're capable.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Amy. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you more. Can't wait to check out more of your podcast episodes and connect. Well, thank you again. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with our listeners. I'm sure everybody learned so much. And until next time, bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.